The two people involved are so rigid on this. Mohammed Ziauddin Yusuf is so ardent that he doesn't like Rupert Lowe. He's going to do whatever he can to keep Rupert out of the party. Nigel Farage is so he will do anything to back Mohammed because he wants his money. He wants the support, the financial support that Mohammed brings to reform. And so, as long as those two people are against Rupert, there's no way for Rupert to get back into the party.
Breaking right now, the Reform UK civil war is getting even more dirty than yesterday, and that is quite something. Let me take you through the new developments, which include absolutely furious responses from Rupert Lowe's team, who have now reported Reform UK itself to the police. Now, you know, usually I would say, do not waste police time on this type of thing. The slight issue here is that it was Zia Yusuf and the Reform UK chairman, Zia Yusuf, who actually started this tit for tat by reporting Rupert Lowe to the police for hurty words in the first place. And there's an investigation going on to that regard. So here's what Rupert Lowe revealed on X. He said, and this is in regards to the release of the KC's report yesterday into the so-called bullying and toxic environment in his parliamentary and constituency office. Rupert Lowe wrote, "I've just spoken to parliamentary authorities about the disgraceful harassment and intimidation of my innocent staff through this reform report. Their names and the report were released without the KC's permission today. My staff have also spoken to the police tonight, having been invited to express their understandable worries. Reports have been made. Parliamentary security are concerned and are now involved with my staff. None of this is acceptable. Dragging my staff into this mess to smear my name is desperate and disgusting. In 67 years, I have never seen such unprofessional and vile behaviour." Now, the KC, Jacqueline Perry, I have done my own reporting on this over the past 24 hours, and I can confirm that she was not giving her permission to Reform UK for the report to be published. And what's so worrying about that is it means she didn't have the opportunity to speak to Rupert or Rupert's staff, who have been named publicly, which is why they have gone to the police, potentially claiming malicious communications and harassment. Now, there are consequences to this. I have learned today that one of Rupert Lowe's staff is so devastated by being named publicly that they have now had to take a leave of absence because of stress. So all of this is getting incredibly messy, incredibly dirty, and I think we do have to realize there are human beings involved in all of this. Nigel Farage, however, he just wants to move on, and he's decided to focus his fight back on the protesters yesterday at the Reform rally by saying that it means that there is a real worrying decline in the country's education. Reaction from Father Calvin Robinson in just a moment, but first this is what Nigel had to say.
The National Education Union are going to tell people at school, don't vote for Reform, it's dangerous. They're a mad, bad, far-right, racist party. This is left-wing indoctrination of young people coming from, frankly, people who hate this country and everything it's all about. TikTokers, if you're at school and being told this nonsense by your teachers, and by the way, I meet you in the street every week and you tell me that, object. Don't be difficult, don't be awkward, but object. And make sure you back Reform every inch of the way, because we're the only people that will stand up for you and stand up for this country. To hell with left-wing teachers.
Quite good messaging, but as Carl Benjamin of the Lotus Eaters retweeted that video saying the replies are just Farage getting roasted. Because the problem is, Father Calvin Robinson, and look, I admit there is a real split on the right over this issue. There's a split even within the Outspoken audience, Father Calvin. There are people who say, I shouldn't speak about it at all, that I should do some sort of GB News style cover-up and just pretend everything is fine and dandy and that Rupert Lowe hasn't been reported to the police, and let's just pretend as if Rupert Lowe has disappeared off the face of the earth. I can't do that, honestly, as an independent journalist. But there are likewise the other side who say, we'll never trust Nigel Farage again.
Good. We've come to the conclusion that I came to working with the man. I will never trust him. I don't think he's trustworthy. I think he's centered on himself. He has no care for the country other than what he can get out of it, unfortunately. As with most politicians, we know this. People have been saying for years, they're all the same as each other. But yet somehow they put Nigel Farage on a pedestal. I think it's because we're looking for an alternative. We're looking for someone to help us. And he was the rising star for a number of years, but he has proven himself to be disloyal to his party members. I mean, not even his party members. There are no members. There are subscribers who pay into the Ponzi scheme, the pyramid scheme. There is no membership. People have been saying, we're cancelling our membership. Reform haven't cancelled it. There is no membership to cancel other than your direct debit that you pay in to Mohammed and Farage. So, make of that what you will. But his statement there was right. His statement was good in that, yes, the lefty teachers are indoctrinating our children. They have been for a long time. It's the reason I'm a commentator, because I started out from talking about this as a teacher,
Yes, you did.
seeing how much left-wing indoctrination goes on in the classrooms. And it's every day in every school across the country, pretty much. And my advice to parents at this moment is homeschool, home educate. You are responsible for your children and their education, not the state. And the state seems to want to take ownership and indoctrinate them with values that go against most British people's values. But we've reached a point in the UK, at least, where people think that actually the school is a childcare service and we're supposed to hand kids over so that we can go to work and get things done. Not the case. And over here in America, thankfully, most conservatives and most Christians are now coming to the realization that if there isn't a parochial school, then they need to home educate their children, because it's the only way that their children can be guaranteed a good, solid education that doesn't undermine them, their country, and their way of life. Anyway, Farage's point was good on that, in that, yes, the lefty teachers are doing this. And he was right that they will call him far right and all these words. The problem is he isn't. It would be nice if he was on the right of British politics. He's moved gradually further and further to the left under the patronage of his backer, Mohammed, it seems. And it's all just so petty. This, we filed a court case, we filed a report, like, stop it. Grow up, be men. Stop falling down to this petty playground politics of we're reporting you back, we're going to leak your names. It's sad. Is this really what we've come to on the right of British politics, where we can't even have 5 people in a party without them losing their heads?
Well, indeed, and I agree with that. Again, I guess all I would say in that case, and this is not, can I just be clear, me saying that I'm on a particular team, but all of this was started by Zia Yusuf when he reported Rupert Lowe to the police for hurty words and released a statement designed to destroy him. Yeah. Interesting, I was looking at this tweet earlier, or this post on X earlier from Connor Tomlinson, our friend Calvin, and he agreed with a lot of what you were saying. This was his response to Farage, and he said, this is very effective messaging which shows that reform has real potential to reach young men who, like me, were sick of being patronised by progressive teachers. And he gives some advice about how reform can make the most of that potential, clarify and strengthen its policies, especially on immigration, but crucially, resolve this bitter dispute with Rupert Lowe. At the moment, Reform codes as the only anti-woke party which is tough on migration. Mistakes have been made. It is not an attack on the party to observe that. Reform now needs to live up to the space it occupies in the public consciousness to have credibility. There's still time to do that. But it doesn't seem like there is any, desire, shall I say, within Reform UK to settle things with Rupert Lowe. I want to show you Alex Wilson, who is their only London Assembly member, breaking his silence after the release of the report on GB News yesterday. But first, the reason you're watching this show is that it's becoming increasingly difficult to trust mainstream media or the so-called fact checkers who claim to determine which facts are true. And there's good reason for that, given the debate over free speech, the controversy surrounding Brexit, and how Trump and other politicians challenging the status quo are portrayed. But I have the solution for you. It is called Ground News, and it is absolutely the best way to stay informed and cut through media bias and narratives so you can get the facts for yourself. Go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. But what I want to do now is show you this incredible website and app. It's got an amazing app, which I have loaded on my phone, in action. So let's look at that speech quite recently by the US Vice President J.D. Vance to the Munich Security Conference. My God, it was amazing. He tore into European governments. He tore into the UK for a despicable retraction of free speech. And what Ground News does is instantly collate the 361 sources covering the story in one place. It then shows how that story is being covered, broken down by whether those media organizations lean to the left or the right. It is called the bias distribution service. And if you scroll down, you can see every article about this topic broken down by the political position and ownership of the publication. So in this case, quite clearly, Newsmax and GB News gave fair and accurate coverage, which you could read, focusing on how Vance finally had the guts to point out uncomfortable truths to European leaders. By stark contrast, absolutely dishonest coverage from the likes of the HuffPost and the Independent, which you could avoid. What's more, Ground News gets to know you personally, providing you with news stories you're interested in, while also analysing your own biases. So I'm going to tell you about my favourite feature. It is called the Blind Spot feed. And every day, it will surface upwards of 20 stories that you might not be hearing about because of the corruption of the mainstream media. Now, look, I know because you're watching Outspoken, you love the news, but for very good reason, you don't trust the legacy media. So Ground News gives you the tools to understand the truth about what is really going on. It's the only way I read the news now. It allows me to see through media bias and manipulative narratives without having to rely on the corrupt and captured MSM. So go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. I have an incredible discount at my link today. 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use for unlimited access. Ground News, I should say, is subscriber funded, supporting my sponsors, supports my work. And for less than a Netflix subscription, you can get all the world's news in one place and think for yourself. So this is a game changer for a news junkie like me. That's ground.news/outspoken. But now back to the show.
I approached this with an open mind. I've now read the report and I've seen his conduct since the investigation was launched. My mind is now very much made up. This vindicates the party. It vindicates Nigel. It vindicates Zia. It vindicates Lee.
But you say chose not to. Yes, he said last Thursday, I won't cooperate, but the KC had given him until tomorrow to reply, and the Reformers put this report out today.
He's very clearly said he wasn't going to reply.
But he'd been given until tomorrow to reply.
Perhaps, but he very clearly made it very, very obvious in his comments, and he's been conducting this through the platform of social media, which doesn't help anyone to go tit for tat on Twitter.
Maybe, but surely it also doesn't help anyone to release a report before you've heard from both sides of the argument, Father Galvin.
It doesn't, and this is the problem. It's been a quite clear smear campaign against Rupert Lowe since the beginning, since Mohammed made it public that he was unhappy with Rupert Lowe, and Farage took his side, kicked him out, and they made it very clear they don't want him back in, regardless of what he does or says next. That's sad, because people are pinning their hopes on reform. Connor Tomlinson is the best of British. He is right, absolutely. This is what they need to do. They need to fix this situation. It is redeemable. They have another few years before the election. People can and will forget about what's happening now if reform take the right approach. But I don't think they're capable of doing so, because the two people involved are so rigid on this. Mohammed Ziauddin Yusuf is so ardent that he doesn't like Rupert Lowe. He's going to do whatever he can to keep Rupert out of the party. Nigel Farage is so... he will do anything to back Mohammed because he wants his money. He wants the support, the financial support that Mohammed brings to reform. And so as long as those two people are against Rupert, there's no way for Rupert to get back into the party. And the problem is the vast majority of reform supporters, or sponsors, if you like, would have preferred Rupert Lowe as the leader of reform, which might have something to do with why all this drama is going off.
Well, of course it is. Of course it is. But Father Calvin, I'm just looking at our live chat right now on YouTube, and Paul Diaz has said, Dan, you are so biased against Nigel. Shame on you. Now, Father Calvin,
such a nonsense.
I'm sure, I was going to say, I'm sure you totally disagree with that, because you probably have been telling me for quite some time, Dan, go harder on Nigel Farage, go harder on Nigel Farage. I actually think I've been completely fair on Nigel, and I don't have a bad personal relationship with him at all.
Not at all. This is the problem with our politics. Everyone is so polarized. Like, you cannot even criticize reform or Nigel Farage, otherwise you're against him. It's like, actually, you've been one of the biggest supporters of reform. You've been saying consistently since day one that Nigel Farage could become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. You and I have had many debates on this where I've said I don't think it's likely, and I don't particularly want to see him become the next Prime Minister. And so people like Paul, they're upset that you're picking faults in what is quite clearly a faulty party and a faulty leadership system. But if they want it to get better, if they want it to win, these faults have to be fixed, not plastered over, not ignored. We can't have blinkers on and have blind faith in Nigel Farage as the supreme messiah of reform. That would be a mistake. That would be silly. And so people need to find the nuance. People need to grow up and stop pretending it's black versus white and you're either on our side of reform or you're against the country and stuff like that. It's a nonsense. If you're on the side of the British people and the British country, then you want the best person to lead the opposition party so that you have the best chance of taking over from the two-party system. It's as simple as that.
Indeed. And the thing is, Father Calvin, as you know, I've always described myself as a critical friend of reform. I think the problem is they don't want any criticism whatsoever, even from people who want them to do well. And look at this latest poll, Father Calvin. It does show that it looks like their support may have been dented by the Rupert Lowe situation. Certainly their momentum in terms of building the membership base, which had been flying, has been seriously harmed. They're stuck at around the 219,000 mark, and I'm told that over 10,000 people are trying to quit the party. So that matters. This is not some small issue. At the same time, as you know, I am very, very happy to say when I think Nigel is doing a great job. And one of the things that Nigel does so well is his retail campaigning out on the ground. And I loved this moment that was captured by the Daily Express of him visiting a closed down Conservative club. Watch this.
Well, there we are. The club's closed, the party's closing down, and reform are going in. The Conservative Club is owned by my son. It finished as a club more than 12 months ago, and my son, who owns the dental practice, Main Street Dental, has bought it to convert it into his new dental practice.
And how long was it the Conservative Club for, roughly?
Donkey's years.
Yeah.
Yeah, donkey's years. As long as I can remember.
Hey!
He's beaten us to it, because I was thinking of putting a bid in and making it the Reform Club. It's too late. It's too late. He won't be conservative.
And honestly, Father Calvin, this is one of the things that annoys me most. Farage is an amazing campaigner. He is great with people. It's what he loves. He's off all of his media work for the next 6 weeks all around the world so that he can focus on campaigning. Just imagine if he had harnessed the intellectual heft of a man like Rupert Lowe to do the policy work, to prepare for government, to become the shadow Home Secretary for reform. That's what needed to happen.
Yeah, it is exactly what needed to happen. He is a fantastic campaigner, always has been, but he's never, ever supported anyone that is more intelligent than him or has any other expertise that he doesn't have. He's not good at promoting other people. He can only promote himself and drag others down in order to make sure he shines the brightest. We saw this over not just UKIP and the Brexit Party, but also over Vote Leave, over the referendum. It's consistently be the case. I'm willing to be proven wrong if people in the comments can point me to an example where Farage has highlighted anyone over himself at any cost, at any time. It's just not a thing he's capable of.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.